Moment, it has reached the deepest it will get, and now it will slowly fill. That means the worst of the winds should be over, but the trouble is the storm is now getting closer to us. So if we look at that wind chart there, you can see that actually to the north of Ireland, it's quite quiet. The winds aren't too strong. The strongest winds are to the south of that area of low pressure. That's where they are. So over parts of Ireland, Northern Ireland, now beginning to feed their way into parts of Scotland and Northern England as well. That means the worst of the winds
having on
should be over,
travel
but
and
the trouble is the storm is
pretty
now getting
massive one.
closer
I mean, in terms
to
of
us.
infrastructure,
So if we look at that wind chart there, you can see that actually to the north of Ireland,
715,000 homes now without power across Ireland. And that obviously happens because with dangerous conditions come difficulty with our infrastructure, power lines dropping out and all sorts of problems on the roads and on the rails. We've seen hundreds of flights across Belfast, Dublin, Aberdeen, Glasgow, Edinburgh, all cancelled. And of course, it's not just today. Those weather warnings are set to expire by 2 o'clock in some places, 5 o'clock for the red alerts later this afternoon. But the impact of the travel will no doubt be felt across the weekend as people look to rebook their flights and rebook their travel. So I think we're set to see it continue.
And I guess it's not a novelty anymore, Molly, but these alerts do come through your phones these days as well.
Yeah, 4.5 million people, which I think is the biggest use of the tool since it was created. That's a lot of people in those affected areas, essentially being told, take care, look where you travel and try and basically not travel, don't go out.
Steph, in terms of where this has all come from, it's you've mentioned a couple of times, it's a sort of jet stream from the US, but I was reading one story that did lead one flight coming over overnight to go 200 miles an hour, quicker than normal.
So there are a few advantages, but I think we could all agree that there are maybe more disadvantages to this storm, especially as the automated weather station in Mace Head, which recorded 114 miles an hour, has now gone offline. So we don't really know exactly what's going on around there.
No, I mean, certainly there's more negatives than positives, but it's interesting that it's, I guess, sort of planned enough, or we know enough about it that a pilot would choose to fly within that jet stream.
It's been a very long time that they've been hitching a ride with jet streams. Yeah, it's always taken longer to go over to the States than it has to come home again. Yeah,
and how much longer is it likely to stick around, these warnings?
This is moving through. So the last of the red alerts should ease at about 5 p.m, but then it goes to amber until about 9, and then the worst of the winds leaves early Saturday. That heads up northwards. But on Sunday, we've got another weather system bringing us yet more strong winds and heavy rain.
Where's that coming from?
Again, passing under that jet stream. You often get a series of them because the jet stream stays in place a bit longer than the little areas of low pressure move under them. So we've got another one for Sunday, but it won't be this bad.
Molly, the hope, though, of course, over the weekend, these warnings ease and travel picks back up again.
Yeah, I think certainly parents will be hoping that come Monday the kids will be back in school and the nurseries will be back open again. The hope is clearly this has happened on a Friday, it eases over the weekend and then hopefully back to normal come Monday.
Molly, Steph, thank you both so much, as always, and from throughout the show today. Well, we're going to take a quick break here on Sky News Breakfast, but when we come back, we'll continue our ongoing live coverage of Storm Eowyn. We'll have live reports for you from Northern Ireland, from the Republic of Ireland and from the north of England. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back.
Mandatory evacuation!
Storm system. It's been deepening rapidly. Lots of isobars, particularly on the southern edge of that area of low pressure. So the strongest winds tracking across the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, into central and southern Scotland. It's here that we've got the red warnings in force. Widespread gusts, 80, 90 miles an hour. We could see 100 miles an hour or more. In fact, we've already had 114 miles an hour gust in the Republic of Ireland. But more widely away from the red warnings, also amber warnings. They last longer. They could be gusts over the hills and around the coast of 80 or 90 miles an hour. So severe disruption likely right across the northern half of the UK. For England and Wales, after the morning's rain clears away towards the east, we're left with some sunshine, but still windy conditions here. Gusts 40, 50 miles an hour widely, more than that over higher ground. Still windy, but not quite as windy as this morning across Northern Ireland. 40 to perhaps 80 miles an hour for many of us. This is the gust of wind we're likely to see. Now that is in relative shelter. In exposure, they'll be stronger than that. It is not going to feel warm with temperatures around 6 to 9 degrees when you add on the wind chill. Heavy rain also across parts of Scotland lasting through into the evening. Snowfall over the higher ground could be 25 centimetres, in fact. Blizzard conditions for a time across parts of Scotland. Overnight tonight, some wet weather across parts of southern England. And it's going to be a cold night. So with temperatures falling to freezing or even a little bit below that, we are likely to see some icy stretches taking us through to Saturday morning. Now, Saturday, thankfully, a little quieter. The centre of Storm Eowyn has moved off towards the northeast by this stage. Still a bit of rain to come across parts of southeast England. That should clear through the day. Gales are still expected across parts of northern and western Scotland, perhaps first thing for Northern Ireland too. But for most of us, thankfully, a much quieter and less windy day. More rain in the west later on and feeling chilly, only around 6 or 7 degrees. There'll be more outbreaks of rain on the way for Sunday as well, but thankfully the winds won't be as strong and as disruptive and dangerous as they are out there today.
Join Americast as we navigate the biggest news and politics in the US.
With lively chats about what's happening in America
and social media investigations.
Travel to the heart of America.
With Americast, a BBC podcast. Listen on BBC Sounds.
I'm telling you, there's going to be a revolution.
Have you considered resigning over this? Because you're clearly embarrassed.
Of course, I have been. I have thought about this.
We have now the best or most sophisticated information technology in history, and people are no longer able to talk with each other or to agree on the most basic facts.
I want to be totally honest with you, and I am being honest with you.
At least this should be a common ground for everyone. We should defend international law.
In the spirit of your title of Hard Talk, you're completely wrong.
I'm not offended, but I want to hear
You're
why.
completely
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Coming up on today's show, millions are told to stay at home as Storm Eowyn hits, bringing with it rare red weather warnings.
Plus, we'll bring the latest from Novak Djokovic, who says he might have played his last match at the Australian Open after retiring injured in his semi-final against Alexander Zverev this morning.
It's Friday, the 24th of January. Your headlines. Airports across the UK cancel over 300 flights, while some rail operators tell people not to travel.
And red weather warnings here in Ireland and Northern Ireland, with the highest wind speeds ever recorded on the island.
Remember, stay indoors,
as the storm
everybody.
moves further inwards, motorists across
Stay
the north of England
indoors,
are being
don't
told
go
not to
outside.
travel unless absolutely essential.
Exactly, essential. These guys
Also
are
had
essential.
MPs call for a review of the Southport killer's sentence. He was given a minimum 52 years in prison.
We'll have the goals from Spurs win and to beat Rangers 2-1.
A very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us here on The Breakfast Show. Well, our top story this morning, stay home. That's the warning to millions of people in parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Storm Eowyn has arrived in the British Isles and brings with it several rare red weather warnings. More than 4.5 million people have received emergency alerts on their phone as a result. Well, we've got correspondents for you across the country for you this morning. Thomas Moore, let's go to Thomas first in Portrush, Northern Ireland. Thomas, it's been getting steadily worse for you throughout the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. The winds here have really been picking up since we arrived here before first light. Let's start with the picture down in the south of Ireland.
Remember, stay indoors if it's unless it's absolutely necessary. Your life could be at risk.
Mace Head, County Galway, recorded a gust of 114 miles an hour, breaking a record that has stood since 1945. 715,000 homes without power. You can feel the gusts.
Nobody's wampers. of news people
You
that
can
go outdoors.
feel the gusts and being blown from both
The police
directions.
are
It's quite
advising everybody to stay
extraordinary. Winds
indoors.
coming up this street, but also
Get
from
home.
behind me.
Don't
as the
go
winds
outside.
swirl around.
Here,
Here in Port
there's your
Rush.
wheelie bin, mate.
So far, there's been no structural damage, but the wind is howling and whistling through the town centre. It's quite extraordinary to witness winds that I've never felt in the UK before. But the storm centre isn't expected to hit here until mid-morning. Winds will pick up still further, reaching a peak of 95 miles an hour, according to forecasters. As I say, 715,000 homes in the Republic already without power, and that's expected to increase. Another 93,000 here in the north of Ireland have also been without power. Port Rush is like a ghost town this morning. This would normally be expected to be reasonably busy. The shops should be opening. They're not. They're shut. Schools and colleges are closed. People have been urged to stay at home. Public transport is almost non-existent, with flights in both Dublin and Belfast severely disrupted. This storm is extremely disruptive and the police say exceptionally dangerous. They are urging people to heed their warnings, to stay at home and stay safe.
What about you
Well, on that
fucking
note,
ball?
Thomas,
This
do
is
please
so
stay
funny.
safe. We could almost feel it just
Stay
by
safe,
watching you there
citizens.
as well. Thank you so much for that report from
Thank
Port
you very
Rush.
much
Let's
for
now
putting your
join
life
Shingy,
on the
who's in
red line
Blackpool
for the
us.
sake of
Shingy, it's
shite.
been pretty windy for you too.
Yeah, that's right. When we're talking about this storm, we're just looking at different ends of an extreme scale. So England also has a number of weather warnings in place in large swathes of the country. Those include here in Blackpool, where there's an amber weather warning in place until 9 p.m. and we could see wind speeds of up to 80 miles per hour. In fact, to be honest, we're feeling those blusters now. It's incredibly difficult to just stay still while talking to you. I can still taste the sea salt coming off the Irish Sea. And I know that this is normally a very busy promenade, even in the winter, but it's pretty much a ghost town. We've only seen a couple of people who are photographers trying to brave the conditions, trying to capture this storm, and they're very quickly going back to their cars and going back home. So it is, people here are heeding that advice to stay inside for the most part. We also know that there'll be disruption across the Northern Rail, producing a number of updates talking about how the line has already been impacted between a number of major cities. People trying to travel north of here towards Scotland on either side of the East Coast or West Coast main line are going to struggle to get any further. Wow, there are very particular dangers that always come in coastal areas. The Met Office warning is talking about the risk of any flying debris and things being detached and blown away by these winds could impact people who are trying to go for a walk if they dare to do that, or people who are living on the seafront in those seafront properties. But the advice to motorists as well is pretty stark. A number of motorways have already been closed overnight due to those wind speeds, with motorists being told not to travel unless the journey is absolutely essential, because these are dire and dangerous conditions.
Shingy, thanks so much for that in Blackpool. Meanwhile, Connor's now able to join us from Glasgow. Connor, what's it like there?
Yeah, less than an hour now until this part of Scotland, central Scotland, covering millions of people, the bulk of Scotland's population, get into the eye of this very dangerous storm. A red weather warning comes into force across this part of Glasgow, Edinburgh, at 10 o'clock today, and the warnings are stark. The weather is bleak. All of the schools across the whole of central Scotland, as I said, the bulk of the population are off today. All of the trains are cancelled across the entire country. The ferries, clearly, that are at that lifeline service to many communities off the west coast of Scotland, they are off as well. And again, the planes are struggling to get off the ground. Cancellations across the board at our key transport hubs. This morning, the rail network has confirmed that a gust of 98 miles per hour has been recorded here in Scotland, and that is before the eye of the storm hits this part of the country. So as the communities gear up in the coming hours, they batten down the hatches and they heed those warnings, those orders to remain indoors. This is unprecedented stuff, driving across the motorway this morning to get to this location, slowly coming across the country.
Stay indoors,
the motorway
then,
during peak rush hour was absolutely empty. People heeding those warnings, businesses clearly having to be responsible in these conditions and allow those workers to stay at home, to flex to these weather conditions, and clearly take care of childcare arrangements as well, given the schools and the nurseries are closed as well. This is a ferocious storm heading in this direction in the coming hours, and the authorities are worried that there is clearly a danger to life.
Connor, thanks so much for that. Well, Steph and Molly here with me on set, as they have been throughout the morning. Steph, I mean, just from some of those reports, but Thomas's in particular in Portrush in Northern Ireland, clear to see how strong these winds are.
Exactly. We often hear about winds gusting to 80, 90 miles an hour. My dad always said it wasn't really a storm unless the needles hit 100 miles an hour. But you don't really understand and appreciate what those are until you see pictures like that and people struggling to stand up as the winds get to, you know, gusting around 90 miles an hour.
Has it peaked where Thomas was in Northern Ireland? Is it going to continue to prolong at that scale for a few hours?
Yeah, so the red warning there was from 7 o'clock till 2. So during that time, there will be incredibly strong winds gusting over 90 miles an hour, and most likely. Then after 2 o'clock, it will start to ease there, but only because the storm's moving. So the problem is going further east, and it'll be over Scotland at that point.
Which I guess is what Connor was alluding to, and it obviously looked a little bit calmer there in a relative sense. Molly, what effect is this having across the country?
Well, these are the types of weather conditions that take people by surprise. It's things like roofs potentially ripping off, the strength of those gusts, flying debris, trees falling down that can cause all sorts of problems. That's why 4.5 million people have been notified by the Met Office to say, you know, it's an emergency alert, try and stay at home, and all sorts of disruption despite those warnings. We've seen schools in Northern Ireland and in Scotland close, the same with nurseries. On the rail networks, well, they've been heavily impacted this morning. ScotRail have suspended all of their services. Parts of Northern England and North Wales also quite heavily affected. National Rail telling people not to travel up to Scotland at all. And in the air as well, we've seen at least 334 flights which have been cancelled across Aberdeen, Glasgow, Belfast and Edinburgh. That amounts to somewhere in the region of 50,000 passengers affected. So we're talking big numbers of people. The same for motorists on the road. They've been warned, don't take any unnecessary journeys, only make that journey if it is absolutely essential. And the RAC saying, don't go near coastal areas and park clearly away from trees. So lots of different types of impact for thousands of people, millions in fact.
Steph, often we don't have any idea at all how long these things persist and when they'll move on. You seem to be talking with more confidence than normal in terms of the hours and that it'll pass and ease. Well, why is that?
I guess sometimes with weather systems, there's a bit of give and take. So, you know, plus or minus an hour if a wave's developing on a storm or something like that. But this is an area of low pressure that's marching through pretty quickly. So we know that it should move off. There's no reason for it suddenly to stop.
Well, we hope it does move off quickly, guys. For now, thanks so much. Now, the MP for Southport has demanded a review of Axel Rudakabana's sentence. The 18-year-old was handed 13 life sentences. He'll serve at least 52 years in prison for the murder of Alice de Silva Aguiar, B.B. King and Elsie Stankham at a dance class last summer. The MP for Southport
head and was heroically retrieved by my camera operator, but it is getting really, really fierce here. I am talking to you, but when those gusts of winds hit you, honestly, they take your breath away. So, just like that. So I'll try my best to keep speaking to you. But the major issue we're hearing from people in Northern Ireland this morning is that lack of electricity. You heard from Chris there in the Republic of Ireland, over 700,000 people there without power. The figure is just under 100,000 in Northern Ireland. So lots of people waking up this morning without electricity, and they'll be hoping to solve that as soon as possible. There's lots of advice coming through on how to get through Storm Eowyn today. The red alert is in place in Northern Ireland until 2 p.m. If you do have electricity, make sure your devices are charged so that you can keep up to date with what's happening. Police saying that you should have torches available until in case light sources go out, and to have extra blankets, and also to check in with people that you may know of who may be a bit more vulnerable, may be frightened in these conditions. Now, police at Northern Ireland did say yesterday they are treating this as a major incident, that they have said the wind speeds that we are dealing with right now could be the strongest that have been seen in Northern Ireland since 1998. The authorities here say, look, they are prepared for the storm, they're prepared for what's coming, what's going on right now,
such a long time
and the
ago.
clean-up, but they've asked individuals to make their own preparations. There's two major key pieces of advice, as you've heard from Chris as well. Don't travel if you don't have to today, and stay indoors to see out the worst of Storm Eowyn.
Sarah, we will let you get your breath back if you can. Thank you very much. That's Sarah Gervin in Donaghadee in Northern Ireland. Our correspondent David Wallace-Lockhart is in Glasgow, and the east coast of Scotland, David, really feeling the brunt of this.
Well, west where I am, certainly wind starting to pick up at the moment in Glasgow here. And it's sometimes not too bad, but then just occasionally you're getting quite a big gust that moves you about a bit. Have been winds of over 70 miles per hour recorded in Scotland. And like I say, not until 10 o'clock does the red warning come into effect. But you can see occasionally behind me some of the trees start straining. We've got a bit of a sheltered spot here next to a building, but by the River Clyde, occasionally when there's a gust, you see the big spurts of water going over the top of it, the bushes on the far side really bending in the wind, giving you a bit of a sense of what's to come. Now, obviously, there's already been disruption here. This red warning is going to cover the central belt of Scotland and beyond. That will be including Glasgow and Edinburgh. It's where the majority of Scots live, and the vast majority of schools in the country are going to be closed. There's that transport disruption already. No ScotRail trains running, no ferries going to the islands in Scotland. Airports telling passengers to check before they try and make any sort of journey, because there will be disruption there. So certainly widespread disruption expected, and similar advice to in Northern Ireland. It's to stay at home. It's to only travel if it's absolutely necessary, because we are expecting gusts of up to 100 miles an hour. It's a red warning, which of course comes with those that cautionary warning about the risk of a threat to life.
David, for the moment, thank you very much, David Wallace-Lockhart in Glasgow, with the picture, as you can see, of what it's looking like already in Scotland. Well, let's just take you around some of the live pictures that we've got coming in. First, let's take you to Ballyholme in Bangor in Northern Ireland. And we were just speaking to two of our correspondents there, where, of course, some of the worst disruption is due to hit Northern Ireland and also Scotland, as David was just saying. This is Bays Loch on the east coast of Berneray in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland, with gusts, as we've been hearing, of up to 100 miles an hour expected in some coastal areas. Let's stay in Scotland and go to Largs, which is on the east coast, just east of Glasgow. Millions of people, of course, across this red affected area where this rare red weather warning is in place, being told to stay at home, not to travel if they can avoid it at all. And back to Glasgow itself, where we were just seeing how it's just starting to pick up, and how the widespread disruption is really going to affect people. Ferry crossings cancelled, flights cancelled. There is on our website a live page reporting on all of the different developments of Storm Eowyn. You can also read some assessment from one of our colleagues, BBC weather presenter Judith Ralston. She says that she hasn't seen a forecast as severe as this in her whole career, and she describes Storm Eowyn as once in a generation. You can listen to her overview on a short film that's embedded in that web page. Much more on that storm around the world and across the UK. This is BBC News. Donald Trump has signed an executive order declassifying files on the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, his brother Bobby Kennedy, and the civil rights leader Martin Luther King. Uncertainty still surrounds the shooting of President Kennedy in Dallas in 1963, with suggestions of Cuban involvement. Martin Luther King's family have alleged that his killing was a US government conspiracy after the man convicted of murder denied carrying it out. Well, Mr. Trump's been busy signing executive orders, including one designed to bring to an end what's called birthright citizenship. But now a judge in Seattle has blocked the move, calling it blatantly unconstitutional. This was the response from Donald Trump when he was told the news.
Mr. President, a U.S. judge temporarily blocked...
The Atlantic is now massively developing.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience want to know.
That's it, starting to pick up. Let's see if this person can make it down the street, right? Put phone down.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels.
You'd be getting down the street
across Europe close up.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Free, wherever you get your news.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent. Why do you support Vladimir Putin? Cigar.
I'm Conor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent.
Well, that's 40 minutes until it's ready to be hitting in. Big style.
I'm Alice Bunt, Sky's Middle East correspondent based here.
Aye, definitely picking up. Let me see, you can't see my horse. There's a wee ducat in there which is like sort of the bin bit, and there's always hunters of shite. And the wee sort of a ducat bit in the design of the building creates a wee wind vortex if the wind hits it the right way. So, could be fun. Could be fun. Let me see. Technology.
Live from London, this is BBC News. Trains cancelled, schools shut, and millions told to stay at home as Storm Eowyn batters Ireland and the UK. A red danger to life warning is in force across the entire island of Ireland, the Isle of Man, and later for parts of Scotland. A record gust of 114 miles per hour has been recorded.
The authorities say they're prepared for today, as prepared as they can be, but they're asking people to make their own preparations too. 2 key messages: stay at home and don't travel to stay safe today.
Well, this is the scene at Largs in Scotland. There are already reports of trees coming down on the railway.
Yes.
We'll bring you all the latest as the storm sweeps across the region. Also coming up, a judge temporarily blocks President Trump's order to end automatic citizenship for babies born in the US, calling it blatantly unconstitutional. Donald Trump has signed an executive order declassifying files on the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, his brother Bobby Kennedy, and the civil rights leader Martin Luther King.
I'm no holding my breath.
3 new wildfires in and around Los Angeles. Officials say containment efforts and the UK. The Met Office has issued a rare red weather warning for Northern Ireland and the Scottish Central Belt, which means a danger to life. 4.5 million people received an emergency phone alert. Many schools and large parts of the transport network will be closed in these areas. Well, as you can see from this map, it's a giant storm where coastal areas could see winds of up to 100 miles an hour. An amber weather warning is in place for the rest of Scotland, Northern England and North Wales, with separate yellow warnings for wind and rain covering the rest of the UK. Eowyn is also battering Ireland, which has recorded wind speeds of 114 miles per hour in Galway, the fastest since records began. Here's the latest from Joe Inwood.
With winds of over 100 miles an hour, there's only so much you can do to prepare for a storm like Eowyn. First to feel its force was the Republic of Ireland. A red warning is in place for the entire country. Here, it's being called the Storm of the Century. Next in the path of Eowyn is Northern Ireland, where alerts have already sounded on people's phones. All schools will be closed, the first time this has happened since 2017.
Well, it's always difficult, I suppose, to make a decision to close the school, and I can understand the department and the education authority making a decision, albeit quite late on. I suppose the health and welfare, safety of children and the entire school community is really vitally important.
As it crosses the Irish Sea, gusts of up to 100 miles an hour are predicted before it hits Scotland. There's a red warning in place for part of the Central Belt, and they'll be monitoring disruption at this control room, but it's been decided it's too dangerous for any trains to run.
This is a major weather event, and keeping our customers and colleagues safe is our #1 priority. Because of that, we've had to make the very difficult decision to withdraw all of our ScotRail services throughout Friday to make sure that we keep everybody safe.
Much of Wales and the north of England are under an amber warning. There, like everywhere else in Eowyn's path, disruption is expected, and the advice is to only travel if you really have to.
From this storm, we're expecting airborne issues, so debris potentially, power outages. So our advice would be to plan journeys if you are making those journeys. Think about what you're doing in any circumstances and keep safe.
Almost the whole of the UK is set to be under a yellow warning for high winds. Yesterday in Cornwall, there were even reports of a tornado. It wasn't caused by Storm Eowyn, but was a reminder of our increasingly unpredictable weather. Joe Inwood, BBC News.
We all know it.
Well, many transport links are expected to be disrupted today, with ScotRail cancelling all of its services. Travel writer Simon Calder is at King's Cross Station in London.
I cycled here this morning and that was quite windy enough, thank you very much. And if it continues, we could well see disruption at the UK's 2 busiest airports, London Heathrow and London Gatwick.
What has you cycling there got to do with how windy it is? Mad professor there, like, hey, virtue signalling, I cycled here this morning.
That's because they are so heavily used. But meanwhile, it is very much a story, as we've been hearing, Northern Ireland, Scotland, extreme disruption. No public transport whatsoever in Northern Ireland. As you say, all Scottish trains cancelled, and that's not just on the Scottish operator ScotRail, but from here you cannot travel further than Newcastle, well within England, and on the West Coast main line, then you're advised not to try to travel north of Preston, which is basically about halfway from London to Glasgow. Elsewhere at the airports, we are seeing hundreds of cancellations in Edinburgh and Glasgow. The two Belfast airports in particular, I'm counting well over 250 cancellations, and some of those are long-haul flights to and from places like Dubai and Doha in Qatar. So it's going to be difficult for people to make up time. But of course, as you've been reporting, the advice for anybody who's caught up in one of these areas is stay at home. And one reason it's so difficult for the airlines to operate is that actually staff are being told stay at home. It's too dangerous for you to get to work.
Stay at home. The man who just told us you cycled there this morning and it was a wee bit windy. I love these hypocrites. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful hypocrites standing in front of a camera. You should really stay at home, as I'm still here on the Clyde side, really getting blown away.
So I'm afraid it's going to be very messy for tens of thousands of people today.
Let's speak to Professor Liz Bentley, Chief Executive of the Royal Meteorological Society. Professor Bentley, thank you very much for joining us on BBC News. How potent a storm are we seeing here with Eowyn?
Oh, yeah. So one of the strongest storms we've seen for years. I mean, it's been called the storm of the century in the Republic of Ireland, and we've already seen wind gusts of 114 miles per hour on the west coast of Ireland. So that will break their all-time wind gust record. So yeah, red warnings in place across the whole of the Republic of Ireland. It came into force across Northern Ireland at 7 a.m. this morning, and will of the winds from the west of Ireland into Northern Ireland and then into Scotland over the course of the next few hours.
So what can people expect at its worst?
Well, I think we've recorded, as I say, 114 miles per hour on the west coast. That's probably the highest wind speed I think we'll see throughout this storm, but widespread gusts of 80 to 90 miles an hour, and in exposed places over the higher ground on the coastal areas, we could see in excess of 100 miles per hour across Northern Ireland and Scotland as well. Those are damaging force winds. That is why we have the red warnings in place. It really does mean danger to life. When you get winds that strong, it can pick up debris, large amounts of debris, and fling them around, which obviously can cause real problems to people walking about or driving, or to buildings, causing damage. We are also seeing power cuts. So across Ireland, there are 560 million homes and businesses. That's over 500,000 homes and businesses without power at the moment. Tens of thousands already being reported now in Northern Ireland. So you can see as that storm transitions, the impact will transition as well across from Ireland to Northern Ireland and then into Scotland.
How much further afield, though, will people feel the effects of this storm?
So yeah, there's warnings right across the UK. So yellow warnings everywhere, amber warnings for North Wales, Northern England, and the whole of Scotland. The amber warning in the north of Scotland doesn't close until tomorrow morning, so the impact felt throughout the rest of today, tonight, and first thing tomorrow as well. So widespread impacts. I'm already seeing recordings of wind speeds on the Isle of Wight of 83 miles per hour, and wind speeds across northern Wales of 90 plus miles an hour. So widespread gusts, but I think the strongest of the winds, the most severe of the weather, is Northern Ireland and into central Scotland.
Professor Liz Bentley from the Royal Meteorological Society. Always good to get to your insights. Thank you very much for joining us on what will be a very busy day for you, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll speak to our Ireland correspondent, Chris Page. And Chris, you're in Westport, which isn't that far at all, is it, from where that record wind speed's been recorded?
Yeah, stay at home.
Yeah, it's about 70 miles north of Macehead in County Galway, where that record gust of 114 miles an hour was recorded 4 hours ago. So really the winds are, we're told, peaking here in County Mayo right now. It is absolutely ferocious, and looking out to sea, it's very obviously just too dangerous to go right out into the middle of the storm. Debris is crashing around everywhere. There are very few vehicles on the road. People generally, it seems, heeding the authorities' advice to stay indoors, stay at home if you possibly can. We are sheltering from the winds here in the tunnel, so while we've got a good view of what's happening here on the coast, we are very much among those making efforts to keep ourselves safe. Across the Republic of Ireland now, we're told the number of homes and businesses without power is over 700,000. That is also an unwelcome record. Never before have there been that number of people without electricity. In this town of Westport, power's out all over the town. Also, broadband is down, mobile phone signals are coming and going, so there is disruption everywhere. Clearly, there's also going to be a lot of damage and destruction, unfortunately, by the time this storm blows through. And that won't happen for maybe about another 3 hours in this part of Ireland.
Chris, for the moment, thank you very much. Let's talk to one of our other correspondents, our Ireland correspondent, Sarah Gervin, who's in Donaghadee on the northeast coast of
Don't go near to the
Ireland.
shores.
It must be difficult at times to stand up.
Stay at home, unless it's completely necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I did have a hat on just before speaking to you, and it blew right off my head and was heroically retrieved by my camera operator, but it is getting really, really fierce here. I am
so fierce you can catch a hat in it.
Talking to you, but when those gusts of winds hit you, honestly, they take your breath away. So, just like that. So I'll try my best to keep speaking to you. But the major issue we're hearing from people in Northern Ireland this morning is that lack of electricity. You heard from Chris there in the Republic of Ireland, over 700,000 people there without power. The figure is just under 100,000 in Northern Ireland. So lots of people waking up this morning without electricity, and they'll be hoping to solve that as soon as possible. There's lots of advice coming through on how to get through Storm Eowyn today. The red alert is in place in Northern Ireland until 2 p.m. If you do have electricity, make sure your devices are charged so that you can keep up to date with what's happening. Police saying that you should have torches available in case light sources go out, and to have extra blankets, and also to check in with people that you may know of who may be a bit more vulnerable, may be frightened in these conditions. Now, police at Northern Ireland did say yesterday they are treating this as a major incident, and they have said the wind speeds that we are dealing with right now could be the strongest that have been seen in Northern Ireland since 1998. The authorities here say that they are prepared for the storm, they're prepared for what's coming, what's going on right now, and the clean-up, but they've asked individuals to make their own preparations. There's two major key pieces of advice, as you've heard from Chris as well. Don't travel if you don't have to today, and stay indoors to see out the worst of Storm Eowyn.
Sarah, we will let you get your breath back if you can. Thank you very much. That's Sarah Gervin in Donaghadee in Northern Ireland. Our correspondent David Wallace-Lockhart is in Glasgow, and the east coast of Scotland, David, really feeling the brunt of this.
Not yet.
Well, west where I am, certainly wind starting to pick up at the moment in Glasgow here, and it's sometimes not too bad, but then just occasionally you're getting quite a big gust that moves you about a bit. Have been winds of over 70 miles per hour recorded in Scotland, and like I say, not until 10 o'clock does the red warning come into effect. But you can see occasionally behind me some of the trees start straining. We've got a bit of a sheltered spot here next to a building, but by the River Clyde, occasionally when there's a gust, you see the big spurts of water going over the top of it, the bushes on the far side really bending in the wind, giving you a bit of a sense of what's to come. Now, obviously, there's already been disruption here. This red warning is going to cover the central belt of Scotland and beyond. That will be including Glasgow and Edinburgh. It's where the majority of Scots live, and The vast majority of schools in the country are going to be closed. There's that transport disruption already. No ScotRail trains running, no ferries going to the islands in Scotland. Airports telling passengers to check before they try and make any sort of journey, because there will be disruption there. So certainly widespread disruption expected, and similar advice to in Northern Ireland. It's to stay